What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. It's the Thursday NCAA Tournament College Basketball Betting Preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me today are my two co-hosts, Mike Calabrese and the one and only Kai McCure. Gentlemen, Merry Christmas Eve. It's Tuesday night here. The first four is on. I was just talking about how I don't love the first four. It feels like I'm opening. I have to really love a game to bet it. I'm usually doing a bunch of content. It feels like I'm opening Christmas presents ahead of Christmas. Maybe I'm just old school, grew up without the first four. But the tournament for me, really, it doesn't start until, well, we're going to talk about the first tip, like 12:20 on Thursday. Kai, how goes it? And as a kid, were you one to try and find the presents, or if you had a chance to open one early, would you open one early, or did you like to wait?
Well, I'm sure I tried, but I wasn't allowed to do it early. No way. I had to wait my turn. That's right. Discipline in my household, Stuckey.
Yeah, on Christmas morning, we used to wait at the top of the stairs, and we would get called down. And I remember when I was like one time when I snuck down, because I didn't even sleep as a kid. I've never slept. I snuck down and I saw my mom and dad wrapping the presents when I was like 8, and that's when I found out there was no Santa. Sorry, spoiler alert to anyone listening. But yeah, my brother and sister would try to find gifts early. I never did. Although now my wife and I, whenever we buy each other anything, we just give it. We don't even wrap it. We just say, here's the gift I got you. And Mike, how about you? Were you an early gift opener? What did you like?
I was an only child, so I was on a lot of solo reconnaissance missions to find those presents like deep in a closet. But very early on, like 10 or 11, I was like, yeah, this isn't as fun. I'm just going to like let it all happen. Either we're Christmas Eve, open a gift or two, Christmas Day, open the rest. But to extend your analogy, like Texas A&M, Corpus Christi versus SEMO, that's like opening up a stocking and finding the socks you're going to get a couple days early. Like, why are we really rushing and pushing the envelope on that one? I agree with you. First four is not for me. So when they talk about expanding this tournament, there's plenty to go around on Thursday and Friday that actually moves the needle.
By the way, I'll take some socks now. I'm a big give me some socks. But all right, let's get into it. What we're going to do today is we're going to go through every single game on Thursday but one. Alabama's opponent is TBD, so we won't talk about that game. Not that everyone, I'm sure, is itching to hear that. But we'll go through them all, and we'll give our thoughts, then we'll close out with one final best bet for the day. So let's get things started with the first tip of the tournament. West Virginia, Maryland, 8-9, fun little regional matchup in Birmingham, Alabama. This will tip 12:15 Eastern on CBS. West Virginia, 2-point favorite, over under 137.5. I lean West Virginia a bit. I mean, Maryland has been just not the same team away from College Park where they just put runs on teams. But I'll give you a little nugget here and tell you what I bet. Starting off the tournament with it's not the most fun bet, but a first half under. It's the first game. You see this a lot with the noon tips. There's some jitters early, especially the first game of the tournament. Teams come out, they're a little nervous. You'll see the shots just off, and teams don't want to really run, and it's just ugly early on. And Maryland, by nature, plays slow outside the top 300. Adjusted tempo. They don't turn it over. They can compete on the defensive glass. So I think they match up well with West Virginia's offense, and I think vice versa. So I like both matchups for each defense. I think it'll start out slow, and to wit, over the past 25 years, first half unders in this noon time slot in the NCAA tournament of under 70, which this is around 65. They've gone under 66% of the time. So I'm going to start things off with the first half under. Now you can tweet me, send me hate mail if it doesn't hit, and we start off the tournament with who wants to lose a first half under as their first bet of the tournament? But hey, that's what I'm doing. These guys, no real strong feel on either side. Kai?
No strong feelings. I guess slightly into West Virginia. Kind of trust their physicality more. Trust Bob Huggins a lot more than Kevin Willard. So I would prefer to put my money with Huggins.
All right, well, let's move on to a game where we do have strong takes, and that is a very popular underdog. The men of Furman Paladins, a 13 seed, will take on Virginia. This game will tip at 12:40 Eastern on True TV. Shout out to True TV, the home of Impractical Jokers and the first round of the NCAA tournament. Over under 131.5. This game gives me vibes of 2 years ago. One of my favorite bets of the tournament was Ohio as a 13 seed against a Virginia team that was a 4. Became extremely trendy. And guess what? Ohio still won. Trendy dogs can win. I think Furman matches up really well here. I'll share my thoughts in a sec, Kai. Let me throw it to you first. You're a big fan of the Dins here.
I am. This is the matchup Furman wanted, I think. Number one, Virginia's not super athletic, and that's the type of team Furman really struggles against. NC State beat Furman this year by about 19. NC State, much more athletic team than Virginia. Obviously, Virginia plays the pack line defense. They force opponents to shoot over the top of them. That's what Furman likes to do. While they are awesome inside, they are great from behind the arc as well. Bob Ritchie, their coach, is a data ball type of guy, 3 more than 2. They have a senior point guard in Mike Bothwell, who's incredible. Virginia's an experienced team, no doubt. I love Tony Bennett, absolutely. But I like Furman here. I like them getting hot. I like them advancing. And I love Bob Ritchie, Stuckey.
Yeah, well, also Jay Slauson is a hell of a player. 2 fifth-year seniors on this team. And then Pegues, their other guard, who started to play really well in the second half of the season. But yeah, they play 5 out. Not as sharp of a shooting team as last year. They lost 2 of their sharper shooters. They were around 37, 38% last year. But they're still around 35, 36% this year. And it's everybody, right? They play, it's not 4 guys who could shoot and then 1 who can at all. It's 5 guys on the court who can all shoot around 35, 36%, which is what they shoot as a team. And that's what you need against this Virginia defense that packs it in. Also, Virginia plays one of the slowest paces in the country. That favors the dog, limited possessions. And, Furman does want to get out and run. They do get out in transition a lot. They won't have that opportunity here. Virginia doesn't let you do that. But they're 90th percentile in transition offense and 90th percentile in half-court offense. They're very comfortable in the half-court. They run great stuff, very experienced team. And the Virginia offense, it's just, and it's not an elite, athletic, explosive offense, which is what would worry me with Furman, because Furman's defense does have some holes, and they're a little finesse, right? If they could be bullied in the post. That's not really who Virginia is. We're going to go consensus here, Mike.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Virginia's offense is stuck in the mud. They haven't cracked 64 points in 8 of their last 11 games. And Bothwell and Slauson, as you mentioned, they're both Lou Henson Award finalists. That's the mid-major player of the year. So their overall, ceiling in terms of their superstar factor for March Madness is as good as you're going to get from a mid-major. And one final nugget to add in for the Dins, they don't turn the ball over. So, by doing that, they're going to limit the possessions even more. I think if they can score 70 points in this game, they're going to win it. And I feel really comfortable about that. I'm also going to throw out the fact that they're 8-1 over in the market right now to make the Sweet 16. I think that's tremendous value. They might not even have to play another single-digit seed in the round of 32. I don't want to jinx it, but their path here is pretty much tailor-made, and at 8-1, that absolutely caught my attention.
Yeah, because what would worry me, Penn State came out and was 10-10 from 3 to start. I think that game was on a neutral in Charleston, and they almost came back and won that game. They did get destroyed by NC State, which is a bit concerning. They're down 30 in that game. But NC State's more of a athletic, can overwhelm you, and Virginia's just not that. Now, as far as the second round is concerned with Furman, we won't have podcasts this weekend. We will have live shows, Big Bets on Campus live Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. So make sure you check out those shows for previews. And obviously, we'll have tons of content on the actionnetwork.com and the Action Network app. But one thing that would worry me about Furman, and Kai, I know you're a big Richie guy and like this Furman team, as do I. I was happy to see them make the NCAA tournament after some heartbreak for these fifth-year seniors. They would play the winner if they win this game, and I think they're live to do so. They would play the winner of Charleston and San Diego State. I think they have a much better chance of beating Charleston because it would be more of the game that they like to play. Whereas I worry about the physicality of San Diego State and them bullying them a bit. Would you agree with that?
I would, but man, Charleston's physical too, and they're also
that's true.
A team full of athletes.
But that'll be more of an up and down game, right?
Certainly something they're more used to. And Furman's used to playing some slower teams in the SoCon as well. Like you said, they're comfortable in the half court. So I'm not worried about Virginia, playing their style. I think Furman can adjust and adapt to it.
Yeah.
I do worry. Yeah.
I was going to say playing Virginia might be good prep for if they win for playing San Diego State.
Yeah, it's true
in a way. But go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, Brian Dutcher, I have a lot of respect in terms of being a game planner. If they end up drawing San Diego State, that's the matchup I worry a bit more about. I know that Matt Bradley has to shoulder so much of the offensive load for the Aztecs. But overall, I would prefer to see the Cougars in the round of 32.
That would be a really fun game to watch. All right, let's move on to a game where we're going to have some disagreement here. Utah State, Missouri. Utah State, 1 point favorite over under 155. Utah State, the 10 seed, is a slight favorite here over Missouri. This game's 1:40 Eastern on TNT in Sacramento, California. This is the analytics versus the athletes. I called into your radio show with you and Rob Doster the other night, and was like curious to get your thoughts on this game. The analytics love Utah State, and they don't really like Missouri, but Missouri has a trump card here in a significant athletic advantage, and you think that'll ultimately be the difference. So I'll let you state your case first.
I do. That's the first point. Yeah. Utah State, they struggle against athleticism. Just look at the teams they've lost to this year. San Diego State 3 times. Weber State's a pretty athletic team. SMU's a pretty athletic team. They just don't do well against high-level athletes. Kobe Brown is going to be a matchup nightmare for Utah State, both on the perimeter and if he decides to go inside. Secondly, Utah State can't really exploit Mizzou's weaknesses, which is going inside and dominating on the block and grabbing offensive rebounds. They don't go for offensive rebounds. It's not their strength. Mizzou does give up a lot of threes, but also consider Mizzou has to help down a lot in the SEC. They have to clog the paint. They have to give up the 3 in the SEC, and they should. The SEC is the worst shooting conference in America. So I think they can adjust their style a bit and get out in the 3-point line and deny that a little bit more against Utah State. And on the other end, I trust Mizzou to score against Utah State's defense.
All right, it was a strong case, Mike. Maybe we'll have you break the tie or say who made the stronger case. Well, I agree. Kobe Brown's going to be a nightmare to match up with him. By the way, I bet Utah State here. I bet him small because I assume I'm going to be able to get a better number live. There's going to be a lot of points in this game. I would lean over.
Yeah.
And there's going to be runs, right? There's going to be tons of threes. Both these teams chuck threes. So you're going to have one team go on a 12-0 run. It doesn't matter. Like teams up 10, it doesn't matter. They could be right back in the game within 2 minutes. So both teams, Utah State has done a better job of running teams off the 3. Utah State, both these teams can really shoot the ball. But I think that, what Missouri, one of the strengths of Missouri, and I love this coaching matchup, by the way. I think we got a really good field of first round coaching matchups all across the board of just, I love this coach and this coach, which will make for some fascinating X's and O's battles. But look, Missouri, one of the things that they do well is they mix up their defense. They're going to throw a lot of zone out there, and they're going to press you, and you can't really zone Utah State. That is a disaster waiting to happen. So I'll be curious to see how they play this on the perimeter. Do they go more man? They don't have to help down inside, and you can't press Utah State. They grade out 99th percentile against the press. Now you could say, look, they don't play these super athletic teams like Missouri, but I trust Utah State to make more shots, and they're going to get more open looks based on what I've seen this year. But I highly respect both coaches. I also like the over, and I don't mind trading this game. Like Utah State goes up 11-1 early, and you can get Missouri plus 4.5 right off the bat. Missouri makes a run, you come back with Utah State plus 5.5. Like I think that's a great approach to this game. Mike, analytics or athletes?
I'm going to go athletes, but I do like your insight into live betting and how that, this can play out a little bit more like an NBA game where you're going to wait for the teams to make the runs. I lean more towards the over. 154.5 doesn't scare me off. I think this game's going to be played in the 80s, to be honest. So I'll go ahead and lean with Mizzou, but I'm going to keep my money on the sideline until we at least get 4 or 5 minutes into it.
Yeah, I might look live over too. So this game's in the afternoon, like early afternoon. So there might be some like jitters and cold shooting early. But I think now look, when these totals that are super high, it's tough in the tournament because at times you need a lot to go right. You can't have, if if the game is like tied with 8 to go and you are on an overpace and it's the NCAA tournament, then all of a sudden you'll see it, just the game will slow down and like every possession means so much more. And then all of a sudden these teams get like tighter and then they just start valuing a possession. It's not as up and down. And it could start slow, in Sacramento, new gym, maybe some jitters early. So it is a high number, but I agree. I think this game, if you play this 100 times, more times than not, it's played in the 80s. So if they do get off to a slow start, there's so many passed offense here. And I think the pace for the most part will be fast. So if this is the teams are 0 of 9 combined from 3, it's going to be a ton of threes in this game. To start the game, look for a live over. I think this is a great trading game, as evidenced by the total. All right, good stuff there. Let's move on to a little less intriguing of a game. Howard is dancing. They will take on Kansas in Des Moines. This game will tip at 2 Eastern on TBS. Kansas 22-point favorite, over under 145.5. I don't really have a strong take here, Mike. I know you don't either. Hi, anything on Kansas and Howard? Can Mr. Settle and company for the Bison keep this within the number?
I tend to lean no. I lean towards Kansas here. Don't really expect them to struggle. Howard against KenPom top 150 competition this year. Lost to Kentucky by 32. James Madison 26. Belmont 23. Yale 46. And then VCU. They actually hung with VCU. They lost by 10. They certainly have a great player in Elijah Hawkins. Also a Settle. But they're simply going to be overmatched. Turnovers are going to be a huge problem. 356 in the country in turnover rate. KU's defense this year has been excellent. They'll force some ball handling issues, and the talent levels, they're just not close per usual in a 116 matchup.
Yeah, and they lost by 10 at
Against
VCU,
yeah.
who didn't have their best player.
Mm-hmm.
Baldwin didn't play that game.
True.
So that's worth noting. Yeah, that a 50-point loss to Yale is pretty scary to know that going in if you had a ticket of plus 22. So yeah, Kansas might be able to name it there. Let's move on to another really intriguing game. This is the pace clash. So from when they showed this, sitting down watching the bracket, I fell down my stairs, by the way. So I was up getting a water, and I had my whole setup down my basement. I have a bracket filled out, and I write down the matchups, like it's 2006. I won't be able to get one on the internet in like 2 minutes, but I just like to look at it right away. So I have it like a written bracket, and then I start filling it in. So I heard them saying and all right, now we reveal, and I was a minute late. So I grabbed my water and I sprinted down the stairs, and I slipped and fell all the way down my stairs. Luckily I didn't get hurt. Got up and ran to the couch. What a champion and grit I showed, and wrote down the bracket. But when I saw this, the first thing I said and tweeted, I was like, pace clash. This is Charleston, San Diego State. Really fascinating 5-12 matchup. San Diego State's a 5-point favorite, over under 141.5. This game will be at 3:10 Eastern on True TV in Orlando, Florida. Kai, your case for the 31-win Cougs.
Yeah, it's not a bad draw for Charleston. It kind of sucks. I like both these teams a lot. But what Charleston had to avoid in this first match, in my opinion, was an explosive offense that would welcome their pace. And that's not San Diego State. They're certainly better on offense than they have been in the past, but they still prefer a half-court style. They're not, for instance, in Alabama or in Iowa or Gonzaga, to which I would think Charleston would struggle to keep it close because they do love to run up and down. The three-point looks are going to be there for Charleston. They have not shot that well this season, but they do have shooters, and they're 9th in the country in three-point attempt rate. They let the ball fly. Pat Kelsey, another one of those analytic-style coaches. San Diego State, 280th in the country in three-point attempt rate allowed. They will pack it in. They will tend to give up looks from the outside, force Charleston, beat them with jumpers. Both teams are pretty deep. Again, I really do like both coaches, but I like this Charleston team a little bit more. They beat Virginia Tech in the non-con, Kent State, Colorado State by 10. I think they can hang here with the San Diego State within 5.5.
Yeah, so Charleston, you think that they're comfortable enough in the half court. You're going to have to make some jump shots to beat San Diego State just based on their their scheme. And by the way, Matt Bradley, like he's a high variance nature or part of this game. If he's hot, like he'll put a run on any team, and then he could also shoot San Diego State out of the game if he's off. But Charleston, look, they're extremely deep and they come at you in waves. And look, they have guys like Larson and Smith who aren't great statistically. They're like 32, 30, but they can get red hot too. Charleston just has so many avenues to different offense, right? They're not uber reliant on one guy. It's a very hard prep. Mm-hmm. If one guy's having an off night, they can get offense from somewhere else, which I really like against a great game planner, which Dutcher is, and a great defense, right? They can't just focus on, let's just take this one or two guys away. Charleston can come at you in waves. You think that they'll, like, the one thing that does worry me about teams that like to get up and down against teams that play slower is, it might not necessarily worry me, but more times than not in the tournament, the game will be slower, and the team that is slower will can control the tempo a little easier. Mm-hmm. But you think Charleston's more than comfortable in the half court here?
I do, and they're talented enough to hang, right? And they're physical. This is not like a only offense type of team. They're really good defensively as well. They can go punch for punch with San Diego State.
Yep.
I'll also throw out here in terms of the committee, like, I know that the Mountain West has not lit the world on fire in the tournament in recent years, but like, what are they doing sending the regular season and conference tournament champion all the way to Orlando? So one of the things, I crunched the numbers in the offseason, since 2014, if you take all the pods, the four teams with the longest travel are 39% against the spread in that opening round, the round of 64. And this is one of the games that hits the system. So I'm going to go ahead and take Charleston.
Probably too. St.
Mary's is absolutely hosed. And then add on top for the Gales, the body clock. It's an 11 a.m. tip-off for the Gales on the body clock in Albany. They're going to have absolutely no fans there. It's ridiculous. But San Diego State is in a similar boat, and I just don't understand why the committee did them so dirty, considering how well they played and spent the majority of the season in the top 25.
Yeah, Mary's, it's the West region, and they are playing in Albany. Make that make sense. Yeah, Mount West, you didn't even mention this, Kai, but Mount West, you just alluded to it, Mike. 14, 35-1 against the spread in their past 50 tourney games.
Woof.
0-9 against the spread in their past 9. So, yeah, you're fading Mountain West a couple times here. I went with Utah State, so that does scare me a bit. But they can't not cover forever. Or maybe that's just
that's right. They're due.
All right, let's move on to our next game, and let's talk a little Ivy. Princeton will take on number 2 seed Arizona out in Sacramento, California. Arizona's a 14-point favorite, over under 154. This game will start at 4:10 Eastern on TNT. Mike, Princeton was your darling all year. You backed them with a lot of success. I'm still bitter about Penn because I wanted to see Penn dance and I had a future on them. And I do think that Penn kind of got hosed by the refs in the final minute, but whatever. I got to get over it. Water under the bridge. Are you backing your beloved Tigers here against Arizona?
Believe it or not, this podcast is not brought to you by like Southwest Airlines or something, but I have another, distance mileage trip situation to discuss. They're sending the Ivy League champs all the way to Sacramento, so it's another one that triggers the system. But just in general on the floor, I thought Tosan Owoma was somebody who needed to draw some opponents that didn't have athletic bigs that could make it difficult for him to run that point forward situation. Unfortunately, he's going to run into Tubelis and Ballo. And when it comes to their secondary options, I'm just not as scared of them, particularly at this price point. 14.5, I jumped on it. I got 13.5. I'd play it up to 16. I thought this number should be closer to like what Kansas is laying against Howard, because I do think that Arizona can, for lack of a better word, this is kind of like a neck crack game. This is for them to start feeling good about themselves, get some momentum into the weekend. So I know that Kirk Kriisa is a little bit banged up, but they don't need him to be pumping in many points in this game to cover. So Princeton may be able to slow the tempo a little bit early on. So maybe a race to 10 if you want to get like really gutsy with something that has plus EV. But in terms of the overall spread, I love the Wildcats here. I think they put it together down the stretch. So I like him in this spot.
I initially leaned Arizona. I'm afraid of them here. I mean, Kreese is hurt, and he went like a couple games ago. He made 2 threes against UCLA, but a couple games ago he was like 0 of 7. Like he's playing Princeton in the first round. I could see him going like 0 of 10 from 3. Like I could see Kreese just throwing up.
At least with the shoulder injury, they could be like, okay, you're not right. Like, come on, sit on the bench. But yeah,
I always worry about him like just shooting them out of the tournament. Especially now that he can't shoot. But it's an interesting, like, yeah, Princeton might be able to slow it down. They have a guy who's going to play professionally somewhere in Tosan, he's excellent, skilled. He's top 50 assist rate, runs their entire offense. Now, granted, in the Ivy League, you got to double him and he gets a ton of attention and then he can kick out to their shooters. They are a capable 3-point shooting team, not elite, but they have guys who can get hot. Like Langborg was 40% last year. He was down at 31% this year. So he's fully capable. I kept going back and forth on how, like, can Tosan give their bigs problems with how he can play and he's a little mobile, or is he just going to be shut down and then they can stay out on the shooters? And then also I worry about Princeton's transition defense, and then I worry about Tosan. Number one, he can't shoot free throws, so if he does get to the line, monitor that. But does he get in foul trouble here? And then if he does, then Princeton's really in trouble here, and Arizona could just turn on the transition jets, and then it's good night. Kai, any quick thoughts on this?
I like Princeton first half. I think Ivy teams do really well in the tournament because their offenses are so intricate and hard to prepare for. So the Princeton offense, with all its cutting, its counterpoints, its many different optionality, I suppose, on the offensive end, you can't really practice that and prepare for that if you haven't seen it a lot. So I think that's a big advantage for Princeton coming in early on. Tosan, I do think, has an advantage against Arizona's bigs. By the way, they use him. They play him at the elbow. They play him at the top of the key, right, to initiate offense. There's not going to be much in the paint. He can shoot a little bit from out there too. Not great, but he's a threat. Do I think Arizona adjusts at halftime and then rolls in the second half? Yes. But I do like the way Princeton does tend to slow the game down, play in the half court. They're also an incredible defensive rebounding team. Arizona's a lot bigger. They're great offensive. They can definitely control the glass, but against Princeton, who team rebounds like the way they do, I think they can hold them off at least for 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's Princeton's a hard team for me to get a hand on, just because Tosan can be so dominant against inferior, but he's really good in these. But they play such, like, their schedule is kind of a joke. Like, who was the best team that they played this year?
Yeah, Iona.
Iona. They lost by 6 on a neutral court to Iona. And they were in that game for a while. But yeah, like, Iona is probably the only top. Hofstra, I guess they played in the first game. They lost by 6 at home. But their schedule is just so, it's just, their non-con was outside the top 300. And then you're playing like there's a lot of, you compare the athleticism and talent gap between teams in the Ivy and Arizona. It's hard to really.
Additionally, too, they've been sped up multiple times. Yes, they want to play at a more methodical pace, but you look at it, Dartmouth was able to do it. Cornell was able to do it. Yale was able to do it. And in some cases, they coaxed them into a faster pace, and Princeton lost handily. So I look at that as, this is not a team that's going to, throw the clamps on the entire tempo and be able to grind out, a 10-point loss to Arizona. So in general, there's some other teams in this tournament that I do fear from that perspective. A team like, St. Mary's, that is super comfortable playing at that slower pace and just has a way of shutting down your running game. I don't see that necessarily in Princeton.
Yeah, that does concern me. I don't think I can get there at Princeton. I can see the first half, and we'll go for the double first half, then game. Princeton's transition defense rates out extremely poorly. And then you look at who they played, and it's like, oh God, if Arizona gets out and runs, it's going to be,
worth noting too, we didn't mention Ballo's got a broken hand. He's playing with one arm, one hand. We had mentioned Kreese, but Arizona's pretty banged up.
Yeah, no, that's true, and that's worth mentioning just when you're filling out your bracket. And if you, like, a lot of people are gonna have chalky Arizona, Alabama, but maybe if you want to get a little risky, you have Arizona going out. Princeton, well-coached team. maybe if you have some late, if you want to stay in it, if this gets dicey, Ballow's in there. Hack a Ballow. The guy can't shoot free throws, only has one. Like he's, what's he, a 50% free throw shooter? So if this is like tight late somehow with like 8 to go and I'm Princeton, I start hacking Ballow. Obviously not with Tosan, but I start putting him on the line. Go ahead, make your free throws. And then I'd sag off Priest the entire game. All right. Anyway, enough of Princeton, Arizona. Let's move on to our next game. This is two enigmas: Illinois, Arkansas in the 8-9 in Des Moines, Iowa. Arkansas is a 2-point favorite, over under 143.5. This is the first game out. I think this game will be played fast. Look, these two teams I can't figure out. I mean, Arkansas is arguably 3 first-round draft picks, super talented. Past 2 years, they've gone to the Elite 8. Musselman's obviously proven he can take teams deep in this format. Illinois, a lot of talent, but Underwood, I think, hates this team, and they just have no plan. Like, they're a really good 2-point offense, but they just chuck threes and they can't shoot. Outside of, like, if Matthew Meyer's hot, making, like, his fadeaway step back. They're pretty good in the half court, which doesn't make sense because they can't shoot the three, but they keep trying to run, and they're not efficient when they run. Like, I don't know what this team is doing. Makes no sense to me. There's going to be a lot of bricks in this game. These are two teams that can't shoot from 3. I think that Arkansas has more talent overall, and I trust Mutz more than Underwood, especially this Underwood. I don't think Underwood and this team are connected, and I think that's ultimately what's. But do I really trust Arkansas? Every time I want to trust them, they let me down. But I wish I had a lot of faith in who's going to win this game, similar to FAU Memphis, because I think the winner of this game could give Kansas problems, especially Arkansas. But I think Memphis or FAU could beat Purdue, and I think either one of these teams could beat Kansas. I'm a little more confident in Arkansas beating Kansas than Illinois. But if I had a really strong conviction in my bracket, I could move one of these teams to the Sweet 16, because I think Purdue and Kansas are the most vulnerable ones. But the 8-9 is so tough to pick. Mike, what are your thoughts on this game?
I mean, I agree with your overall assessment. I mean, Musselman, though, he's been a head coach for 8 years. He's gone to the Sweet 16 or deeper 3 times. So he's proven it in a tournament setting. Obviously, Arkansas's roster has a lot of upside, NBA talent, Nick Smith Jr., et cetera. And then I look on the Illinois side, they go 3-5 down the stretch. They need a double OT to beat Michigan. Mayer has played a lot better, but when I look at Shannon Jr., he's so foul shot dependent to be a big impact offensively. But then on the other side of things, Arkansas puts you the line more than just about any team in this field. So for those reasons, I'm going to go with the over 145.5. I think both of these offenses in spurts are going to get it going. And if I'm holding an under ticket, nothing's safe. I could see so many points in the last, 5 to 6 minutes, lots of trips to the foul line, lots of aggressive, dribble drives. So I'm just going to go ahead and, stay away from a side here and just go with the total.
Yeah, the only problem is that these teams just start just settling. There could be just a shit ton of bricks in this game, like legit bricks from 3. These are 2 hard shooting teams. Kai, you just one word answer. You had to pick one to advance in your bracket, or you just going with the Hogs talent here?
Yep, Arkansas. Yeah, trust them. Trust Musselman more. I'll probably end up betting on him, but I got nothing strong in this game.
And you would trust Arkansas more than Illinois to pull off the upset of Kansas, right?
Absolutely. And I'm maybe a little bit biased because I was there for the Illinois-Indiana game in person when Illinois just basically gave up at the end of the game, and there was some weird chemistry stuff on the court. I agree with you. Underwood does seem to hate this team, so I kind of just want to stay away from that in general.
Yeah, there's something that seems just off with them,
mm-hmm.
which comes through in their inconsistency, right? Like you see them sometimes they look so good and then they look so bad, and when that's happening late in the year, usually something's off with the team. All right, let's move on to another 8-9 matchup: Auburn, Iowa. Auburn's a 1-point favorite here, over under 152. This will be played in their backyard, Birmingham, Alabama. Pretty raw deal for Iowa, I guess. We talk about some raw travel deals, but Iowa's the 8 seed, Auburn's a 9. Auburn have a big fan base here, but I think Alabama's here too, so you might have some Alabama fans rooting against Auburn. Game 6:50 Eastern on TNT. Kai, I would look at the over here. Auburn's been playing a little slower recently. Iowa's defense is not going to show. I can't trust Iowa's defense. I can't trust Auburn's offense away from home, but they're kind of at home. This game's tough for me. Do you have any insight to sway us one way or the other?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think both teams are overseeded. Neither deserving of an 8 or a 9, in my opinion. I look at the coaching. I look at Fran McCaffrey, who's been coaching for 27 years, who's made 11 tournaments, 0 Sweet 16s. Then I look at Bruce Pearl, who's been to 11 NCAA tournaments and has 5 Sweet 16s. He's a much more successful coach in this format. I also trust Auburn's defense more than Iowa's defense for sure. But offense versus defense, I lean towards defense in general. It's more consistent. And theoretically, Auburn has the matchups for Iowa's better players. Several wings can check Chris Murray, and several, and Jonai Broom can stop Rebracha inside. So that's enough for me to lean towards Auburn in this one. More athleticism, more length.
Yeah, that might end up being the trump card here. And yeah, I mean, just some what scares me with Auburn is sometimes their guards are very erratic. So sometimes they just shoot them out of the game, and they're just taking really poor shots. They tend to play maybe not even more under control. Maybe they just thrive off the energy at home, and they tend to play just so much better at home. A lot of teams are like that, but Auburn, I think it's a little more extreme. But you're right. I think there is a coaching advantage here. And then the worst unit by far in this game is the Iowa defense, right? So like you look at these teams and you're like, what's the weakest unit? And it is the Iowa defense. Maybe could they go zone here? I mean, Iowa does throw out a zone at a decently high clip. Could they go zone here against Auburn, or they just get murdered on the O glass?
Yeah, I think that's a concern that they get crushed in the glass. And have they practiced much zone this year? I honestly don't know. So it'd be kind of tough to pull it out in tournament setting.
Yeah, they're probably like I think 10 to 12% overall this year. The other thing is that you look at Auburn, they want to, they want to turn you over, and I think they're best when they can also get out in transition, and they also can crash the offensive glass. And then you look at Iowa, and Iowa's 8th in the country in turnover rate. They never turn it over, but they play in the Big Ten. Who in the Big Ten is forcing turnovers, right?
Yeah.
You go back to Iowa State. They beat Iowa State by 20 without Chris Murray, and they had a 30% turnover rate. Can someone explain that game to me? Iowa beat Iowa State by 20 without Chris Murray, and they turned it over in 30% of their possessions. Go back to TCU. TCU played without Ball, I'm listing teams that Iowa played that are top 20 in forcing turnovers. TCU played without Emmanuel Miller and without Damian Ball. They won by 13. Iowa turned it over on 20% of their possessions. So I think that their turnover numbers are a little skewed by who they play, and they're not facing, they're not facing similar defenses to Auburn on a nightly basis. So, yeah, I think I lean Auburn, and you trust the coach. Don't trust the Iowa defense. You're right here.
Just in case we haven't buried Iowa enough, let's throw in some recency bias too. The last month they lost by 20 at Northwestern, which is like losing by 40 to anyone else in this field. They go to Wisconsin, they lose by 12. They lose at home to Nebraska, and then they lose in the tournament to Ohio State by 4. So for a team that already has this huge glaring can't win on the road moniker, attached to them, they're also coming in without really playing well in the last month. So I don't think there's any reason to get fired up for this team. And I agree with you on everything you said about Auburn, but they should get a little bit of the juice from a hometown crowd in Birmingham. So I think the only play here has to be the Tigers.
Yeah, I was talking about Auburn not being the same away from them. That's very true with Iowa.
Yeah.
Although they somehow went into Indiana and then just destroyed them, which that sticks with me way too much for some reason. But that's the outlier. That's the exception, not the rule. All right, let's move on to, I think, the most fun game. I mean, FAU Memphis is up there for me, but Oral Roberts Duke. I mean, it's Max Asmus and Oral Bob, a team that made a run a couple of years ago, versus Duke. If you're not a Duke fan, it's un-American to not bet Oral Roberts here. Am I right? Like, Kai, you got to bet Oral here, right?
Oh, absolutely. Give me Oral, Stucky. I like Oral Roberts here. I think the most dangerous 12 seed in the tournament. People like to focus on Duke's winning streak. I'm not really impressed by it. The teams they've beaten, they're bottom feeder ACC teams or teams with injury issues.
Yep.
They're certainly playing a lot better for sure. and they're a great team with a lot of talent. This Oral Roberts team's no joke, man. They're an experienced team. I think they have the best backcourt in this game with Asmus and McBride. I think it's better than Duke's backcourt. Vanover is going to be a problem for Duke's bigs. He's a 7'5" guy that can shoot threes.
Pick and pop
all day long. My one worry is Oral Roberts did get crushed by Houston. You know, that's kind of
by 45.
Yeah, that's like the closest comparison to Duke. But even then, I don't think it's really much of a comparison. I still trust.
It was November 3rd.
Long time ago. I trust this guard group. I trust the coach and Paul Mills quite a bit as well.
Yeah, that does scare me a bit too, that Houston game. But you can't really run pick and roll against Houston, right? Like you can't everything that Oral wants to do offensively, they can't really do. But Duke really struggles in defending screens out on the perimeter, and that's what Oral Roberts wants to do to initiate their offense. Midcourt max, he's been here before, and you're right. Like pulling Lively away from the rim, he's not going to be comfortable there. The best comparison I can come up with is like PJ Hall, Clemson, when Duke played them, and Clemson won. I mean, Hall went off. So Vanover can probably give Duke similar issues. And yeah, I agree. They've improved. Their defense, I think, has really improved. They're good, but the ACC is bad. And look who they've beaten. You beat Miami, but Omier gets hurt in the first minute. They have no one behind him depth-wise. Duke also goes 50% from three. Miami shoots 30%. You know, they played Virginia, recently just lost one of their starters. And then it's, bottom feeders of the ACC. So, yeah, I think Duke comes in a little overvalued here after their run to the ACC tournament. I think Kempa makes us 3. I make it 3.5. So give me 7 all day. Mike, are you Oral Bob? Give you Oral?
I mean, let's put our praying hands together and let's go for Oral Roberts here. Not only are they absolute fireworks show on offense, they're 4th in points per game, 7th in effective field goal percentage. They take and make a ton of threes, top 5 in both attempts and makes. They're an elite foul shooting team, so you get into crunch time, get the ball to Asmus. He's over 90% from the line. But what I like compared to the team that went to the Sweet 16 as a 15 seed, they're actually much better defensively. They got to 75th in defensive efficiency. They're not a defensive stopper by any stretch, but this is still a young Duke team. Like if Oral Roberts does what they've done all year in the Summit, which is they go on a 10-0 run or an 8-0 run, something like that. How is Duke going to respond when they have to score? Not just, things are going really well as they have for the past month for the Blue Devils, and then they get everybody involved, and Lively's getting some finishes at the rim, and everyone's feeling good about themselves. It's like, no, now you're in the tournament, you're losing to a 12 seed. Who's the one who's going to take the big shot? Like, I think the pressure is going to slide to Duke very quickly in this game, so I'm on Oral Roberts on the money line.
Yeah, I love it. I think this will be a great game. And yeah, that Oral Roberts team that made a run back in 2021, they finished, and this is after the tournament, so they got a boost. They finished 220th in overall defensive efficiency. This year, 107th. So this defense, they've won 17 straight, really confident team. Kai, ready? I'll make you feel a little better. 2021, Oral Roberts, right? They infamously became the second 15 seed to make the Sweet 16. They beat Ohio State in Florida. Their first game of the year in November against Missouri Tigers. They lost by 40.
Wow. I don't remember that game. Good for my Missouri Tigers, though.
Final score was 91-64. And Missouri scored at 1.25 points per possession. Drew Smith, they just dominated them. Yeah, they were the largest lead of the game was, I guess they won. My math is wrong. They won by 30. They were up by 35. But that just shows you, like, sometimes these, mid-majors early in November, you can't put too much weight into an early season result. All right. Let's go Oral. All right. Transitioning to toothpaste. Let's talk a little Colgate, Texas, 7:25 Eastern, TBS, Texas, 13.5 point favorite here, over under 147.5. This game will be played in Des Moines, Iowa. I had a friend recently who was like, I forget where we saw it, and he called it Des Moines. I was like, oh man, Des Moines. So whenever I see Des Moines, I always think of Des Moines now. Game 7:25 Eastern on TBS. Texas 13.5-point favorite. I see a lot of love for Colgate, and I can't get there. People fall in love with their offense, and look, they can shoot. And people say like, "Oh my God, Colgate! They almost beat Wisconsin last year, right?" Well, Wisconsin's not the most athletic team in the world. It's kind of a good matchup for Colgate, and yeah, they still came up short. And then the year before against Arkansas, people remember like, "Oh, everyone get to the TV. Colgate's about to beat Arkansas." They were up in the second half. I see this all the time. They've led in the second half, and they're back-to-back years. Well, Arkansas won, but the one that gave by 17 still. They just so I know Colgate can shoot. They're number one in the country in 3-point percentage, 40.9%. They have a kid, Lynch Daniels, who's shooting 50.3% from three on 153 attempts, over 50%, which is just insane. But they play in the Patriot League, people. No disrespect to the Patriot League. I love the Patriot League.
No, I mean, get out the fife and the drums and everything for the Patriot League. It's awful. I mean, I of my own volition probably watched 15 to 20 Patriot League games, and just no one could play with them at all, and no one could take advantage of their very clear deficiencies. And Texas is rounding into such good shape. I think they're close to top 20 in offensive and defensive efficiency at Ken Pom. Even Dessou is playing better. He really came on in the Big 12 tournament. And one thing that I love is that from a turnover margin perspective, I think they're 10th nationally in turnover margin per game. So they're not going to give out freebies and extra opportunities to a Colgate team that's going to struggle to rebound with them in general, because that's Texas's real weakness, in my opinion, on the glass. They're not going to get taken advantage of here. So unless Colgate goes bananas and makes 16 threes, this is probably going to be a runaway.
Yeah, Texas knows that they're going to shoot three. Like, what else is Colgate going to do? Like, they're going to be out of the shooters.
Yeah.
And also, how is Colgate getting stops? That's my biggest question. This Colgate team, we just talked about this Colgate team, right? That they were blown out. They hung with Arkansas for a half. They almost beat Wisconsin. Their defense is significantly worse this year than the past 2 years, which is problematic. Like, they're going to be at such an athletic disadvantage in this game, and I don't know how they get stops. And yeah, I mean, maybe like Texas is. I'm trying to think of the path for Colgate. Obviously, they got to make a ton of threes. Maybe Texas is just like they come out flat after winning the Big 12 tournament. They're like, we can cruise here, and then it's like an Arkansas deal, right? And then they have to just make a run late. So yeah, this is the Patriot League was bad this year, and Colgate took advantage. Credit to them, but this isn't like your your 2005 Bucknell, who was on that team, right? Who beat Kansas?
Who's that? McNaughton?
McNaughton?
That big center?
Who's the guy? It sounds like Max Ace, but it's Ace Badmus, or right? Ace Badmus. Wasn't he one of their guards? Abe Badmus. I think
there was an Abe Furman in there for sure. Sausage King of Chicago. But yeah, those Bucknell teams were gritty. There's nothing gritty defensively about Colgate. But shout out to Matt Langle, their head coach. He should definitely be getting a better job after this game. He's won the Patriot League Coach of the Year like 5 years in a row. They've either won or tied for first in the Patriot League 5 years in a row. That guy needs to get at least to a true mid-major for his next stop.
Temple.
Yeah, I like that.
Sense.
He's going to get it.
Yeah, there was I love that Bucknell Kansas game was awesome. I had that in my bracket. Master Polo, him, right? Master Polo.
Yes, that's right. That's a good poll right there.
All right. Anyway, people that are like 21 listening are like, what the fuck are these guys talking about? Master Polo, Ace Badmus, McNaughton. I'm going to watch that game on YouTube, the condensed version on YouTube tonight, that Bucknell upset.
I mean, McNaughton was an absolute beast. That little mini hook that he hit to rip out the Jayhawks' heart there at the end of the game. Yeah. I'm sure Kai, as a Mizzou fan, is into that as well. We can all watch together.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
All right. Let's move on to oh God. I'm setting myself up for disaster. This is another Mountain West team that I like. Boise State against Northwestern. Northwestern's a 1.5 point favorite over under 128. This game starts 7:30 Eastern on True TV in Sacramento, California. So I'll make my case for Boise in a minute. I think you liked the under here, Mike.
I did. This says rock fight written all over it. 2 top 15 Ken Pom defenses. If Boo Buie isn't absolutely killing it, then where's Northwestern getting their points from? And he finished the season on a 20 for 59 run from the field. They went 1-3 straight up in that stretch. And then Shaver Jr. is also up and down. Max Rice was off in the Mountain West Conference tournament. So I don't see any hot hands walking into this game. So I'm going to go ahead and play under 128.5.
Yeah, don't hate that at all. This one should be ugly. This is kind of like some of the SEC teams that I'm fading, like Texas A&M that benefits from the poor shooting in the SEC. I think Northwestern defensively benefits from playing in the Big Ten, right? Everything they want to do is to stop post offenses, and they do a really good job of doing that. If you look at how they grade out guarding the post, and then you look at their personnel and you're like, how the fuck are they doing this? And then it's just all scheme. And but Boise State doesn't run anything through the post. They're one of the they have guys who can shoot all over the court. I think their versatility, you can shoot a lot of threes against Northwestern. Their shooting ability of their off guards, right, of guys that Ardege are going to be covering, I think is going to be huge here. And the other side, Boise State, they don't have size. They're most vulnerable in post defense, right? I would be petrified against if I was a Boise State fan if they went up against a team with a really good big. Who's covering them. Northwestern doesn't run any post offense either. So I think Boise State has more shot makers ultimately. And then how Northwestern has been designed doesn't play as well here in this particular matchup. So I'm going to go with Boise State I think it's just going to come down to like who can make a couple more threes in a rock fight. And I'm going to trust the Mountain West team. That's probably a bad idea, but that's how I see it playing out. I also think Boise State, if you look at they try to get in transition sometimes, they're very inefficient. They're much better in the half court, and their half court defense is elite. These are 2 elite half court defenses. But Boise State has no depth. So I think a game, you see them a lot of times wear down at the end of games. They basically, they go 6 deep. So I think a game with limited possessions that's going to be really slow is going to be good for their legs and benefit them in multiple ways. Am I crazy, Kai, for liking Boise?
No, because I trust Leon Rice in the coaching chair more than I trust Chris Collins. And no disrespect to Collins, who had a great season. But the thing that's kind of skewing me towards Northwestern lean is I just think they come in with a bigger chip on their shoulder. I mean, they are the ultimate underdogs. No one believes they're any good. And they are a really tough team. I know Boise is as well. But Big Ten over Mountain West for me, pretty much across the board.
So which is it? Who do you lead?
I'm leaning Northwestern. I took him in my bracket. Yeah.
Matty,
a lot of conviction
over
here.
Yeah. Here's why I lean Northwest. Here's why I lean Boise. And I'm taking Northwestern
right.
in my bracket. And Big
I
Ten.
can't be wrong.
Can't be wrong. All right, let's move on to a 1 seed. We're going to move on to the super late night. Houston, 19.5 point favorite over Northern Kentucky, 9:20 Eastern, TNT, Birmingham, Alabama. 19.5 point favorite over under 122.5. It's a very low total for a Houston team that should get a layup line, but these are 2 of the slowest teams in the country. Kai, should we lay it with the Cougs?
Lay it, man. Bloodbath. Absolute bloodbath on the boards. NKU plays a funky zone that is susceptible to rebounds. They're 333rd in the country defensive rebounding rate. Cleveland State crushed them on the glass every single matchup this season. And Houston's the best rebounding team in the country. I know they're 4th in offensive rebounding rate. This is the best offensive rebounding team in the country. They literally live for this. They practice it all the time. It's Kelvin Sampson's obsession is rebounds. On the other end, I don't see how NKU scores at all. They have a very experienced and good backcourt for sure, but Houston is so swarming, so much more athletic, so much tougher than this NKU team. I think it's a nightmare matchup for them. And Stuckey, I'm sure you got the stats. The horizon has been brutal in the NCAA tournament in the last few years.
Yeah, and look, Kelvin Sampson, by the way, is let me pull up the exact stats here. So Kelvin Sampson is 7-0 against the spread as a double-digit favorite in postseason play. That includes the AAC tournament. Covering by 13 points per game. 2-0 in the dance, won by 31 and 29. That includes a game against another Horizon team. 2 years ago, they were 20-point favorites, Cleveland State, who also gave up a ton of offensive rebounds and also used a lot of zone. Houston won that game by 30. They were up by 40 with like 5 to go. And Horizon 13 to 16 seeds is double-digit dogs since 2005, 2-8 against the spread. They have not performed well. And yeah, this should be a layup line. Like even if Houston's either going to make the 3, so then they get 3 points for the possession, so whenever they shoot a 3, or they're going to get the offensive rebound and lay it up. Like in that game against Cleveland State 2 years ago in the tournament, they had a 50% offensive rebounding rate. So yeah, I know the possessions are going to be it's going to be limited possessions. It's going to be slow. Oh, but on the other end, the only, Northern Kentucky they're going to have to shoot 3s here. You're going to have to do that against Houston, but Houston's perimeter D is always good. Their help and recovery is elite. That's why their 3-point defense is always, so trusting that is a good thing. But, if Northern Kentucky shoots 40% from 3, they're going to cover because there's just not going to be a lot of possessions in this game. And they have some shooters, but if you look per synergy, they face a lot of zones. That's another thing. Houston faces a lot of zone. And they grade out well. They face a lot of zone in the AAC. 2 of the heaviest zone leagues in the country are the AAC and the Horizon. Northern Kentucky, 70th percentile in efficiency against zone defenses. They have some shooters. They move it well. 16th percentile against man. Well, I'll tell you what, they're not going to see any zone from Houston on Friday. I agree. I think this is a bloodbath. I don't even think it matters if Sasser plays.
It doesn't. If they miss, they're going to get the rebound. They're going to score anyways. Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to let's go Tennessee, Louisiana in the East Regional, 9:40 Eastern on CBS. Tennessee's an 11-point favorite over under 136.5. This game is in Orlando, Florida. And this matchup first came out, I said this is a bad matchup for how Louisiana wants to operate offense. I don't know if I can lay it with Tennessee though. Could I really go to the window and lay 11 with this Tennessee offense? Not sure. Mike, you're going to.
Let's go ahead and get the Raging Cajun warm-ups in all black because it's a funeral for Tennessee's season. I've had it with this Tennessee team, and once they lost their point guard, that's enough for me to go ahead and punch the big upset button here, plus 450 on the money line. They have a former McDonald's All-American, Jordan Brown, to hang their hat on. He gave Texas 20 points earlier this season, averaged almost 20 and 9. They're 28th in offensive rebounding percentage. So I really like that from a mid-major perspective. They also limit teams from 3-point range. They only allowed 6.1 made triples per game. ULL is also a very strong 3-point shooting team themselves. I think this is enough. It's going to take a huge probably 25 and 10 game from Brown to get it done, but they were really strong down the stretch. I know that the Sun Belt is not a conference that carries a lot of weight, but they have a lot of momentum going in here. Whereas, Tennessee was leaking oil, lots of losses down the stretch, lots of, struggles offensively. And this isn't the time to try to reinvent your identity with a new floor general. So the fact that they get bounced by Mizzou by 8 in the SEC tournament, I think they looked a little bit lifeless in that performance as well. It's not for me to go with the Raging Cajuns.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I could see the case is, Brown is very good. He's high major talent, and he'll score here. He'll have success in the post. Tennessee's really good defense. It's hard to run offense to the post, but against really good big men, you can get Tennessee a little bit, and he'll compete here. But they have a lot of, they want to dribble, penetrate, and then get into the lanes. And Tennessee doesn't let you do that. And you have to shoot and move the ball to beat Tennessee. Now, Louisiana does have a good 3-point percentage, but they don't shoot a lot of threes. It's not like their offense. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a guy like Kentrell Garnett come off the bench and hit which he could do. He has random games where he hits 7 threes. Garnett comes in and he hits 6 threes. He also could airball 6. But there's a path. I just think it's a tough matchup for the way that they want to run offense, but they're pretty well coached. Maybe they'll make some adjustments here. And Brown is a very good player to have on your side. You would lean Tennessee here too. You don't like the matchup for the Raging Cajuns, Scott?
I like Tennessee here. I love Louisiana, but I don't think they match up well. I think it's impossible to score inside against Tennessee. They're the second best defense overall in the country. Their interior defense is ridiculous. They're a bunch of men. They're very strong inside. Louisiana lost by 28 in that Texas game. They have a lot of talent, but it's not the same as Tennessee. And what worries me about Louisiana, Tennessee blows out teams that aren't as good as them. They're not on the same level. They've beaten 10 teams by 30 or more this season, and they've beaten another one by 29. So basically 11 teams by around 30 points or more. That scares me to fade them. I think Ziegler matters going forward. I'm not sure he matters as much in this game.
Yeah, and Tennessee just has a lot of men that they can throw at Brown and a lot of bodies, which he's not used to seeing. Like he sees Samuel with who's playing right
South
now?
Alabama.
South Alabama.
Yeah.
But like if Brown could get into foul trouble here too, which would be disastrous. But all right, I don't hate the bold call. All right, let's move on to Penn State, Texas A&M. This game will be played. Very excited for this game. Texas A&M 3-point favorite. Over under 134.5. It's going to play 9:55 Eastern on TBS in Des Moines, Iowa. I like Penn State here. Mentioned it before. Texas A&M, very aggressive defense, under screen, help, give up a ton of threes. That works in the SEC. Not against a team that shoots threes and makes threes at a top 10 rate nationally. I think this is a bad matchup for Texas A&M. Both coaches are great here. Another great coaching matchup. I'm going to trust Pickett in this offense. I think this game is more of a coin flip. I like Penn State. Kai, you agree?
I like Penn State too. This is the matchup I wanted. As a Mizzou fan who's seen Texas A&M a couple times, I was hoping they'd get Penn State in the tournament because I think Penn State can exploit them for reasons you said. The SEC in conference play, it's the worst shooting team in America from three. A&M doesn't really have to guard the perimeter. They do against Penn State, who, from a volume plus the ability to make it perspective, arguably the most prolific three-point shooting team in America. They also handle the ball. A&M's not really going to bother them with pressure. Nobody can guard Jalen Pickett. I know A&M in theory has guys that can do it. We've said that before. He's an All-American. He's terrific. And then A&M relies on bully ball offensively to score, offensive rebounding, attacking the rim, getting fouled. Penn State has seen that every single night in the Big Ten. They are outmatched size-wise in every single game, and it doesn't matter. They're still a terrific defensive rebounding team. They still play without fouling. And they're also the most experienced team in the country from an age perspective. Almost everybody on this team is a senior plus. I like Penn State a lot.
Yep, I agree. And you hinted at it, but the three primary ways that Texas A&M scores: off turnovers, at the free throw line, this team that gets some games that go to the line 40 times, and offensive rebounds. Penn State, elite defensive rebounding team, never foul, never turn it over. Mike, you nodding your head there. You're in agreement with we are?
I agree to a certain extent. I think this will be one where I watch the first 48 minutes and I want to make sure that.
Well, you watched the first 48 minutes.
Sorry, 4 to 8 minutes.
Okay,
allow me to.
You're gonna bet it live in the third overtime.
Yeah,
I need to watch the first half, second half, first overtime, 3 minutes of the second overtime. Then I'm gonna make my decision on who I like in this game.
Yeah, that's what it's gonna take for me to come down on this one. My only concern is that Penn State, if the shots aren't falling early, do they have a secondary plan? I know that Jalen Pickett is someone who can take over, but they got so hot down the stretch of the season where if we were having this conversation in January, it's like, would we be viewing Penn State, even the potential, if everything went right? Are we at the very top of the market for Penn State? That's my concern. That's why it's just a pass for me from a spread perspective. Once we get into the third overtime, I may dip my toe in the water.
Yeah, but I mean, even if Penn State's shots aren't falling, I mean, look, you have to assume that they will. They're an elite shooting team, and it's not just relying on one guy. But I don't think like Texas A&M's ever going to run away and hide with their offense in this game, and I think it's going to be slower paced. Penn State also doesn't go after any offensive rebounds, and they get back, and they're not going to let Texas A&M get any easy buckets here, and yeah, so I love Penn State here. All right, final game of the night: UNC Asheville takes on UCLA. UCLA 17.5 point favorite. Over under 134.5. This game's on True TV, 10:05 Eastern. In Sacramento. Bad travel spot for Asheville. They do have a high major player in Drew Pember, who transferred from Tennessee, capable of going for 40 plus. Bulldogs use him in a variety of ways. Pick and pop, ISO, on the block, very versatile player. It got to the line more frequently than any player in the country. But this is an Asheville team that did get pretty lucky. They're kind of like Michigan State light in that they shot 40% from three. Their opponents shot 30% from three in league play. And they won like every close game. Like they were projected to win, go like 500 in conference. But got two guys in Jones and AB who can stroke it from three. Pembroke can also shoot from three too. And you have a star player. Is that enough against UCLA, who does have injury questions, right? Jalen Clark, not going to play. He's one of the best defenders in the country. And you have Bona, who's apparently going to play. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. Maybe they sit him out for this. I don't know. I'm not. Kai, do we have any confirmation on that?
I heard he was going to play, but I'm not positive on that one.
That's what I heard as well.
Too. But you like the Bulldogs here to keep this close, Mike.
I do. I think they have enough overall from a three-point shooting perspective. Pember needs to play really well, but I don't necessarily think he needs to score, 35 and rip down 15 rebounds. Although this year he averaged close to 22, 9 boards, 3.5 stocks per game. He finished 15th in player efficiency in the win score metric. So he just showing off how good he was. He started his career at University of Tennessee. He was a Knoxville kid, stayed in his hometown. They went 18-1 down the stretch, and they're up against a Mick Cronin coach team. I think UCLA's success in the last few years has kind of erased everyone's memory on Mick Cronin. He used to be Mr. Early Exit. All those years at Cincinnati, he had 6 first-round exits in the NCAA tournament in his career. He had a bunch of second-round exits with Cincinnati as well. So with UCLA, their defense obviously is where they were hanging their hat. Not having Clark, I don't think it's necessarily going to be fatal in this game from a money line perspective, but I do think it makes it easier for them to get looks from the perimeter. And then in general, Bona, I agree. Like if he's limited, then Pember is somebody who can not only score inside, but also take his defender outside. There's just enough here that I could see UCLA's more in survival mode where it's like, let's get out of this round. Let's get our sea legs a little bit in this tournament. 18.5, I feel like is a lot. I'd probably play this down to 17. So I'll go ahead with Asheville.
Yeah. A couple things give me pause here. One, like, can they put Jaquez on Pember a lot, and then because you look at some of Asheville's, like AB and Jones have hit like 40% of their threes, but they're in the Big South, and a lot of teams have to send 2 at Pember, right? And then you're getting a lot of open looks. That might not be the case here. Asheville also will press a lot, and they do it pretty well, but it's the Big South. You can't press UCLA, by the way. They're elite in press offense, and then UNCA wants to get out and run a bunch and get in transition. They're good there. Can't do that against UCLA. But I can see
I will push back on that last one. I think Clark had a lot to do with just shutting teams down in the running game. So does that necessarily mean it's a night and day difference? Probably not. But I do think there's a chance for them to at least get some looks. And maybe this ends up becoming a first half play that I can talk myself into, where they get a little bit of success early and UCLA has to make adjustments in terms of Pember, where I agree, like Jaquez has the defensive chops to be able to slow him down. But if he's, putting in some work, scoring some points, maybe they have to double, maybe things get a little bit dicey in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have a really strong fear. It's not like I love UCLA as a huge favorite, especially with some of the injuries they're dealing with. Kai, any thoughts here?
I didn't have anything strong either. I leaned towards UCLA because I just think teams that rely so heavily on one or two guys like Asheville does with Jones and Pember is easier to game plan for and easier to scheme. I also kind of can't get the UNC Asheville game against Arkansas out of my head when they lost by 34. Pember got in foul trouble, had 6 points. That's a real issue if UCLA can get him in foul trouble, which is possible. And then finally, turnovers. Asheville's not a good ball handling team. UCLA, yeah, Clark's did a big part of it. I still think they can kind of cause them some issues in that realm.
All right, good stuff there. Let's one final order of business. Let's go to our best bets of the day. Kyle, I'll start with you.
It's Houston for me. I really do not see how they don't score almost every possession. And I don't see any easy path for NKU to get buckets. So give me the Houston Cougars minus 19-ish, whatever you can find out there.
Yep. And we just talked about this one, so I'll throw it out. Mine, Penn State. I think they match up well on both sides. They could shoot the 3, which is what you need to do against Texas A&M. Texas A&M, a little shock to their system here. They're used to playing in the SEC. And look, we saw what Alabama did to them when they're making their threes. It's the one team in the SEC that really can. And on the other side of the ball, every way that Texas A&M wants to get offense, Penn State can take it away. Trust in Mr. Pickett and Shrewsbury and company. Give me the Nittany Lions. Mike, best bet?
Nothing like racing down the steps on Christmas morning to bet under 127.5 on the first day, full day of the tournament. But Boise State and Northwestern, not only are they elite defensively, I really like their coaching staffs on both sides to be able to game plan out of Boo Buie going off. And then on the Boise side, I just looking through all of their performances in the last month, I'm just not scared of their offense. I think this could be one of those tournament games where it's like 57-55 and just crosses over that 100-point threshold with a few minutes to go. So I'll go under 127.5 as my best play of the first round on Thursday.
All right, there you have it. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. Thanks to Mike and Kai of the Three Man Weave for joining me. Thanks to our audio and video teams on the back end. Make sure you download the Award Winning Action Network app. You can find all of our picks there in addition to an abundance of data and content. Thanks to our sponsor, BetMGM. Enjoy the madness. Merry Christmas ×2. Hopefully, root for the 3-point variance. We do all this work, and a lot of times it's just going to come down to who makes the threes. So hopefully the threes are falling for our teams and not falling for the teams we bet against. Regardless, it's going to be fun. It's a betting bonanza. Enjoy it. Bet responsibly as always, and we will see you over the weekend. Cheers.